The following was recorded in front of a live studio audience at the Studio 21 Podcast Cafe. This is the United Podcast Network.
Welcome to Spouses Talking Houses with husband and wife real estate team Jennifer and Brian Frost. Everything you want to know about buying, selling, investing, and owning property. So let's get real about real estate.
Welcome back to Spouses Talking Houses. I'm Jennifer.
And I'm Brian.
And today we are here with a repeat guest, Marie Degulis with Secondwind Water Systems. And we're going to get real today about PFAS, uranium, and arsenic in water supply. So you're going to want to listen very carefully to this one. First, however, how about a glimpse of that realtor life and our famous work-life balance? What have you been up to, Brian?
Busy week, as I believe I said in the last episode.
Yes.
Filed for my abatement today, right on time, my tax abatement.
Yeah.
And have an open house that we're preparing for this afternoon, closing yesterday. So, very good week. Very
good week. I've been helping a colleague of ours who's filling an executive assistant role on her team. And so we have a process that we go through called career visioning, and it's something that I really enjoy. We talk a lot about, what the role needs, what's the best fit. We do some personality testing. We do some validation of the personality testing. I did some reference checking. So I love that, and I love the idea of bringing people into a real estate career. So that's been fun. What about you, Marie? What have you been up to?
Boy, personality testing, if we get right down into it there, don't you?
We do.
We do that at Secondwind too, because we want to make sure that those of us who are tasked with things that we're going to be successful at.
Exactly.
And that's what they're,
it's about being in your comfort zone and not doing stuff that constantly is grating against what you naturally gravitate towards.
And being the team that we are, we like to know what the skill sets and what the nature of the other people are, so that if we have a challenge, we know where to go for it.
Right.
So that it's not, something that gets bigger.
I don't know which test you guys use, but you're definitely a high I, which means you like people and you like to talk and to influence.
We did the Myers-Briggs.
Myers-Briggs, yeah.
And I am an ESTJ.
Okay.
And whatever all that means.
I am an ENTJ. So it sounds like our first and last are the same.
That doesn't,
and then our middle is a little
surprise
bit different.
me.
E is extrovert, by the way. So.
Yeah.
And what are you, Brian?
I was tested as well, and yet I am still here. So I have no idea what I am, but it is what it is.
I would say you're enjoying yourself.
You're an appraiser. Right?
Yeah. I don't think we did Myers-Briggs on you.
You didn't?
No, we did DISC and.
The DISC.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah, might have done the KPA. But anyway.
I'm not a very good admin, I'll tell you that.
No, you're not. You're not. But so far, you've managed to hold on to your job.
That's true.
So that's interesting. Now, we decided to do a separate episode just on these three things with water. And in particular, I had requested that we talk about PFAS.
Yes.
Because that is in the news.
Yes.
There was not a spill. It was a long-term emission, I would say, maybe, discovered from St. Gobain in Merrimack, right at the Merrimack-Bedford line, going into the Merrimack River. Mm-hmm. And there are entire neighborhoods in northern Londonderry, throughout Merrimack, a little bit of Litchfield, that have been converted over to public water because they tested high for the PFAS. And I don't even know what it is. I just know that it's doesn't break down, doesn't.
The PFAS is an acronym that stands for per and polyfluoroalkyl substances. And the component within this is a carbon-fluorine combo that makes it persistent, organic, and pollutant. So they're called POPs, persistent organic pollutants. They were designed to be forever chemicals. That's another term that's often used.
Okay, that doesn't sound good.
No, but they were hugely functional, and Teflon, that's a famous thing, and that movie, The Devil You Know, was all about Teflon. It had all the ads of how women were so happy to not have to scrub their pans.
Well, we were.
And Gore-Tex clothing, your stain
Gore-Tex clothing.
Yes,
Uh-oh.
yeah. And your car, Stainmaster. Would you like the Stainmaster? Not a chance. My car seats are messy. But the furniture at home, you've got children. They sold, and they still do, I think, sell it in a can. You can spray it on your couch if you need to.
Oh yeah, the upholstery, like the Scotch upholstery stuff.
Exactly.
Yes.
Scotchgard is a brand of that.
Okay.
So they are a part of our lives. They are everywhere in our lives, and they're in about 99% of the population's bodies. It's dangerous for women who are pregnant because they cross the breast milk and the placental barriers too.
My mother and I went to see that movie Dark Water, the one with Mark Ruffalo, I think right around the holidays. And I walked out of there scared. I told Brian I was happy he had gotten rid of our Teflon because I'd been unhappy about that for a couple of years. And then I threw out all of my plastic containers.
Me too.
And I don't know if this matters or not because I didn't really look it up, but I decided that I'm not going to put any plastic glasses or containers in the dishwasher or the microwave.
I'm not sure that the heat has much to do with it. It's the plastic itself, and it's the slippery nature of it, like the inside of your popcorn bag, so the inside of your pizza boxes.
No, Brian won't buy me microwave popcorn. That's been a bone of contention for years. Is he right again?
I am not involved. The products were so cool and so functional that, according to these movies, and again, I am not in that end of the business, but they didn't tell anybody how dangerous they were.
Right.
So when they first started manufacturing them, they would put the processed water out into the waterways. And so down in Parkersburg, Virginia, or West Virginia, I think it was, and on the Ohio River in certain places, they just were contaminating, and that's what they were using for drinking water. So that's a hot spot down there. Up here, when they identified that Saint-Gobain identified out in Vermont that they had polluted that water, they said, let's go look in Merrimack. And that's how they identified that they needed to look here to see.
Interesting.
They're national
not know
polluters.
that.
Wherever they manufacture, they have these stacks. And what they are, they're kind of drying silos. And I know I'm probably being very grossly not detailed about what they do, but they have their products in there and the warm air comes underneath. So instead of being a traditional groundwater contaminant where it's leaching out someplace, this stuff came out of the stack and went wherever the wind took it, and prevailing winds put it down, and that's where the concentrations are.
Oh, all right. So they weren't putting it directly into the river, but it was making its way
up
into the air and then back into the water
and then
supply.
It lands on the surface. And then our pH water here, the rain is very low pH. It's hungry. It hits the surface, dissolves it, and then it goes down into the bedrock.
I had checked out the New Hampshire State website about the PFAS situation in New Hampshire, and I had filled in a little form saying I wanted to have my water tested for it. And I got kind of a form email back that said, we're not doing that at this time, and we'll keep you in mind. Can I take a water sample and test my own well water for that?
You certainly can. If you are interested in doing that as a homeowner, you do have to be very careful about how you sample. Because this PFAS is absolutely everywhere in our lives, you have to wear special gloves. You can't wear the kind of clothing that might have it. You have to be in an environment that's controlled. Let your water run, and you have to be very careful about what touches the water that goes in there. There are some labs in the area that are testing it locally. Mostly the labs take the samples and send it off someplace else, and I think the lead times, they were 4 or 5 weeks. I think maybe because the push has been, kind of past us, we're down to like 2 or 3 weeks back again. But it's an expensive analysis, dependent upon the panel that you do. I think one of the standards is about 20, and that's about $250. And then if you do more, it's a lot more expensive.
And is this something that if I spend the money to do the test, the treatment costs almost the same as the test, or?
No.
No. Okay.
Treatment never costs just $500, silly.
Okay, that's fine. I was just thinking, should I just maybe preemptively treat? I think was what I was getting at.
I think the concept of protecting your drinking water from anything that might be sneaking in there is a good one. And I will say that Secondwind, the water in New Hampshire isn't awful, right? We have a little iron, we have a little manganese, sometimes there's some stink, some hydrogen sulfide. Mm-hmm. People were dealing well with that.
Yeah.
When 2016 came around and people went, oh my goodness, there's contamination, we were saying at least people are paying attention now. So because we have a lot of customers in that area of the contamination, we said we're going to put some money into some pilot testing. And we're going to go out and test all the clients that had reverse osmosis, and nobody got PFAS through the RO.
Really?
That was when we said, thank the ever-loving Lord, because guess what? If it was going to cross that, we were going to be in deep sneakers trying to find solutions.
Because then what were you going to do to take care of it?
Yeah. So that is on the consumable end of things, and that's only consumable water, how we best remove it at the tap. There are whole house solutions, and again, dependent upon what you have and how much you have and whether you're on a municipal supply or a well supply, we do what they call adsorption tanks in the basement. And if there are higher levels, we do something called the lead lag configuration with sampling taps in there so we can tell when the first tank is done doing what it's doing.
Yeah.
We have situations where there isn't a whole lot of PFAS in there, but they wanted whole house, so you've got one tank. But then you have to look at chlorine and things like radon and competing factors against that granular activated carbon media to size and do the surface
flow. All right,
flow.
so you're going to have to just back up a little bit for me. So I do the test. I discover I have PFAS. Is there an acceptable level? Is that been set by the EPA?
The New Hampshire DES years ago, when this first came up with a health advisory of 70 parts per trillion.
Okay.
And again, that was a health advisory, and then they put the PFAS compounds onto what they call the UCMR, which is the Unregulated Contaminant Monitoring Rule list. And there's UCMR 2, and I think we're still in 3. So that's where it's at. New Hampshire is very conservative, and they were not happy with 70 parts per trillion because the longer you study it, the more you understand that this stuff creates damage. And it's, we don't want our younger generation, mostly it's the children, of course, we're focused on at this point.
Well, I think of children and also pets, dogs.
And pets, animals too. They're
very small systems. Yeah,
that's right. So the DES was charged by our legislature to do the studies on the various levels and what levels would be the most protective. So the DES in the late summer last year came up with 4 MCLs for PFNA, PFOA, PFOS, and PFHXS. And those were the 4 that we had human studies, low level, but some human, and those are the ones that have new MCLs, and they range from 11 to 18 parts per trillion down from the 70.
And so those 4 different, are they compounds or chemicals, are all part of the overall category of PFAS?
They are 4 out of hundreds.
Okay. And they basically are a form of a plastic or a byproduct of a plastic. Surfactant.
Yeah.
And a surfactant means that it will make something sort of slick.
Slip off it.
Waterproof, grease-proof, what have
Correct.
you. Yeah.
Correct.
I'm wondering now how many of my clothes have that type of stuff on them. Yeah.
Doesn't it just get you going?
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. It's hard being me too. Living in this world, I think about it every day. And, the technologies that we're using to remove them, we're not even 100% comfortable with the performance that we're seeing. We're waiting for something else to be better. We're using granular activated carbon a lot, whether it's, 1 tank or 2. We have ion exchange resin that we're using as an adsorption technology, which is similar to carbon, where the water just flows over the media and this stuff sticks to it.
Yeah.
But the systems have to be very carefully sized so that the contact time with the water against the media allows that sticking to occur.
So once you've pulled this out of the water, how are you safely disposing of it?
Well, we monitor how much is in there. And when it's as maximized as we can, because what happens sometimes, and this is what We're learning as we live. And again, there's continued studies happening at the state level and at the scientific level. But we essentially need to remove the media, put new media in, and then we bring it back and dump it in a dumpster. And then it goes off to an incinerator.
So, so when I have my system serviced every year, as I now have learned I'm supposed to, you guys take care of that, removing the old media.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just saying, your particular system doesn't have the media that needs to be removed on a regular basis.
I'm just saying if I had
if you had it,
PFAS,
yeah. So
sorry,
so your system doesn't have that sort of a thing. But
right.
yes, when you have a media that's an adsorber, you have a minimum amount of gallons at a concentration of X. We size it that way, and over a certain time, we know when it reaches that maximum, and then we take that out. And if it's a lead lag, we take the second tank, put it in the first, and then rebed and put the new tank in the back.
So it's not a one-size-fits-all.
It never is one size fits all. And I would say that for your listeners, it is very important to size it properly, because if you do not have that, what they call EBCT, empty bed contact time, the water against the media, and you're going too fast through there because you don't have enough media.
It's not doing its job.
It's not going to do its job.
Can't grab anything.
And because this is a new contaminant, and the DES has said, yes, we've got new MCLs, but the rulemaking behind it and the law is not complete yet. There are competing people out in the marketplace that will sell you something less expensive because there's not as much media in there. So you have to be very careful to know what you have and to know how much you need to get that time so that you're paying for something that's of value.
And you, like you said, you can't see it, so it's not tangible
I know.
to you. So
You need to...
you have to trust.
There is something, well, I'll tell you, you can take one step further. Secondwind has certified water specialists. We all have taken the classes, the training, and the proctored exams. And when you call us, you're talking to certified people who have regularly, we have to keep up our licenses.
Yep.
So when I think out of like the 22 that are in the state, I think we have 20 of them on our staff.
Oh, really?
Wow.
Yeah,
That's impressive.
It's a voluntary certification, and it just shows we are dedicated to the market. We are dedicated to our people, making sure that they can be the best they can. Because guess what? When you guarantee your solutions, you've got to be on your game. Why do it twice when you can do it right the first time?
Right. Now, if I am on a public water source or a community well or something like that, how do I check whether my water has been tested?
You, I'll call you a layperson.
Okay.
Anybody, anywhere can go on Google, Brian's favorite place, and search the community and the year and something called a CCR, or Consumer Confidence Report.
Okay.
Every municipality and every public water system, of which there are about 1,800 of them in the state, need to produce these once a year. Secondwind is actually public water operator, and we operate 150 systems.
Okay.
So with the new MCLs that hit last year in Q4, we were charged with going out and doing baseline testing for all of our public water systems. Those results should be in the CCR. Generally, they're way, way down the bottom.
Okay. Yeah. I've gone to the one stop through DES and done the search part is a little clunky.
It is.
But I've been able to find the most recent test results for any community well or community water source that I'm interested in.
You know, One Stop is a really great tool. I mean, everything that we do, we load directly into there. But if you're not familiar with the terminology and what it is you're looking for, it can be hugely cumbersome. So I would start with the CCR. And then if you've got questions, call the water department, because the contacts and who's responsible for that water quality are listed right on that report.
Oh, excellent. All right, good.
Yeah, and that report is also good because it tells you what the source of the water is, what the risk assessment to the sources are, what they're testing, what the disinfectants are, and what the levels are that, and by the way, if they've been in violation.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
There's a lot of data
and if they're
there.
on like a plan to remediate or something like that?
The testing program generally is not something part of the CCR.
Okay.
That would be something you would see in One Stop, and you would only see it if they're doing chemical monitoring for bacteria at the same tap on a weekly or a monthly basis. You know that they've had a problem. So the minute you have a problem, your testing regimen ups the frequency at which you test.
Now, we drink bottled water, and I did also find on the state website a list of different bottled waters that they had tested for PFAS and which ones had it and which ones didn't. We moved from buying the big cases of bottled water to having a water bubbler and the big jug. And what do we use, Crystal Spring or?
To tell you the truth, I don't know. It's switched. We buy from Home Depot, so
I would say that I think that's Crystal Rock, and
Okay.
that
Oh,
doesn't
Crystal Rock.
surprise
That
me
sounds familiar.
because you liking that crisp water.
Yes.
I think that is a particular water that has more mineral.
Well, and
on
I
your
also
palate.
I drink tea all day long, and I make my tea with the instant hot water off of that because I can't stand like a microwaved water for tea. So yeah, you fill those jugs, don't you, or you just bring back empty jugs and get a
you just
full?
replace
It's
them.
a swap. I
It's a
think.
swap. Okay, all right. So
You thought I filled those?
I have no idea what you do.
Where have you been?
I stopped by the side of the road. And, yeah.
Well, there used to be that spring
Yes,
in
there did,
Londonderry
yes.
where people would fill their water bottles. Anyway, so I don't actually drink my tap water. I just use it maybe to make pasta. That's about it.
That's interesting.
Okay.
That's consumable water.
Gluten-free pasta.
Gluten-free
Yeah.
pasta, yes.
So you're using your tap water that contains arsenic to cook your pasta,
Well, we have an arsenic filter.
right?
Okay.
And the
Which
arsenic,
is not doing its job.
which is not doing its job
Okay.
because it's overwhelmed due to the size.
Right. So our particular arsenic filter
Right,
is not
right.
doing its job.
When
Yeah.
you have to really be careful. I mean, when you talk consumable water, it's everything. It's your coffee water, it's your pasta water,
Right.
even cooking eggs. I mean, you've got that permeable,
hadn't thought of
shell.
that.
I mean,
Yep.
everything that you're doing, you're making soups, you're making, a little dabble-do in your sauce. Every bit that's going to go in your body, it all adds up. But back to the bottled water, the reality is most people who are doing bottled water are not really good at recycling. And I think, while you can talk about BPA-free plastics and leachability into the water itself, the fact that I think even right on the Dasani bottles, it says made from reverse osmosis water. So you don't even know. They could pull up to the neighborhood, whatever, and make RO water, and now you got bottled water.
So I should just have RO water at home, it sounds like.
That is, okay, so Secondwind, we provide all these solutions. My value system says I will not ever drink water elsewhere other than from my own RO tap. I don't do ice cubes. I don't go to restaurants and drink. I just don't like the idea of it. But I've been in this business a long time, so it just gets on my mind. And I think about it all the time, and I can't get it out.
Well, when we were talking about cooking water, I was thinking, well, I don't cook that much. I go out to eat. And then that led me to be like, well, I don't know what's in their water, do I?
Yes, no, you don't. And I mean, up to and including all the disinfectants. I mean, many restaurants, high-end restaurants, don't dechlorinate the water they put on the table. So you know that it's coming right from the city.
Yeah.
And to me, I'm like, I just can't because...
No, thank you.
Yeah, I just no thank you. Right. I just opt not to.
All
It's
right.
too late for you, Jennifer.
It is too late for me, but I could have
Got to think about the kids, though.
absolutely the kids
And
and
the
the pets
grandkids,
and the grandkids. And it might not be that late for me. I mean, I could.
We can always start doing something.
He has
a little
taken me
differently.
off of the microwave
Yeah.
popcorn.
But back to the fact, people who, I don't need that. I have bottled water. Well, that's terrific. You get 36 bottles, you bring it home. Some people even I live in Nashua now, and there's everything out at the curb. They're not even recycling. And there's something for me that switched flipped the switch was, do you know what the Pacific Patch is?
No.
The Pacific Patch is a patch of plastic out by the Marshall Islands, in where that water goes, that's the size of Texas.
You're kidding me.
jeez.
Sorry.
Yes,
Yes. You scared me.
It's plastic, and the currents and everything are banging this plastic together, and the pieces are falling, and the plankton are eating it, and it's in our food chain.
Ooh.
So you eat, the big fish eat the little fish,
Yeah.
but it's that plastic that, people aren't recycling it, or even, in this day and age, if they're supposed to be recycling, I don't think the recyclers are having a good time because there's been issues with China. They used to take a lot of the plastic and do things with it. And we need to get better at reusing the stuff that we're recycling. But
Well, and we have a teenage daughter, so there was always about 6 opened bottles
Partials, yes.
lying around that were some degree of almost full, and nobody knew whose they were.
Well, I knew it was Casey's.
Right, but I would end up just watering the plants with them, and then for working out and stuff, I use the metal
Stainless.
canister bottles, but I'm filling them from our bubbler, which I guess we're going to get an RO instead. Reverse osmosis. RO stands for
reverse osmosis. That is the best line of defense against things that could sneak into your water. And a lot of the time, think about all these people who all of a sudden learned they had PFOA or PFAS in their water. Right. They had no idea. It's odorless, it's tasteless. All of a sudden, it's there. Well, moving forward, folks, everybody should protect their drinking water.
Right.
And there's a little bit of an issue. I work with the state often, and when I went up to speak to the engineer up there, she said, we really, for residential, would like people to use reverse osmosis because they're still not 100% comfortable with the idea of granular activated carbon or even ion resin being an absorption technology because they're then consolidating the contamination, picking it up, and moving it elsewhere.
Right.
So you've got landfills that are leaching. I know there's some issue.
So when you do the reverse osmosis, you're basically pulling everything that's non-water out of the water. Is that correct?
Everything that's non-water. Water has a lot of dissolved components in it,
right.
So you are rejecting the dissolved components, and the H's and the O's are passing through the membrane to the permeate.
All right, good. Now that leaves as a liquid, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So if you have some PFAS in your water, where is that liquid going?
The liquid goes out to your main waste, essentially, where it came from.
So we might potentially still be putting it back into the groundwater then?
Yes.
Okay.
But until they know how to bust it, ruin the component and break it apart so that it's not as dangerous, or until we get a capability that can really reliably incinerate it and ruin that chlorinate, the carbon and the fluorine.
It won't break down currently.
It doesn't break down.
Currently,
so they're
they
concerned,
don't know how to do that.
Again, over time with, a lot of everything that's going to be hitting the landfills and these incineration entities, you don't want to take the contamination from A and put it over on B.
Right.
Now, Jennifer, if you feel better, we have a reverse osmosis system here, so your water is safe to drink.
Well, I'm glad to hear that because I feel like a lot of the environmental stuff that we test our residential homes for, nobody addresses in commercial properties whatsoever, where people are spending 40 or more hours a week.
I think a lot of it is with cigars, they always want you to use distilled water. And the reverse osmosis water is fine to use because if you use water to humidify with contaminants in it, you end up with mold and all kinds of problems.
Excellent, because that is something we also deal a lot with is the water quality that you're putting into things like humidifiers and sterilizers has to be of a certain quality. Otherwise, you're hurting your equipment.
Humidifiers, bad news.
Yes.
Now you're just putting it all over the place.
And it also gums up the works.
It leaves the crust.
Right? Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Interesting. So before we go on to talk about uranium and arsenic, I would like to check in with Brian for How's the Market, sponsored by Real Value Appraisal.
People are asking what mortgage rates are going to do.
Yes.
Mortgage rates are pretty low right now. At bankrate.com today had the average rate at 3.71 for a 30-year traditional mortgage.
So that's a new drop, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah.
In 2020, economic geeks think the interest rates will stay around 3.7% for 30 years and 3.2 for a 15-year mortgage. And that's according to Kiplinger.
So we've been at historic lows on the mortgage rates for at least 5 years. And I keep thinking those are going to go up, but they haven't. They're still extremely competitive.
Well, economic indicators are slowing, and that will tend to bring the long-term rates down.
Okay.
So they expect that to continue.
And then I didn't read the article, but I saw like a brief headline that the coronavirus fears might have something to do with the interest rates dropping right now.
Oh, definitely. I mean, it's having an effect on all economic factors. But yeah. And let's see who gets elected president, and who knows.
Right.
There's so many factors that
yeah.
affect rates, but
Yeah.
I mean, it's a great time to get a mortgage.
It is. It's cheap money,
Yes.
basically, and if you have a higher interest rate, you might want to look into refinancing. And we always recommend when you refinance that you try to drop years and leave your payment the same.
If you can go to a 15-year mortgage, you're doing yourself a great favor.
Make all of the difference in the world. Make all of the difference in the world. And certainly, it's nice to see our buyers have good buying power because of the low interest rates. And I've been happy that they haven't jumped up, because I'm worried that when that does happen, I'm going to have people who start looking and they can afford X amount, and then interest rates change and all of a sudden their budget has been affected and they can't afford that much anymore.
Exactly.
Yeah. So we've been happy. It's been good for our business for sure.
Definitely.
Yeah. Yeah.
And hopefully they expect it to continue at least throughout this year.
Generally speaking, in an election year, I've never seen the interest. Where's my knock on wood part? But usually in an election year, they don't rise because whoever is the incumbent party wants to have the economy be very robust, and housing is a big portion of the economy. So
now, if we can just whip up some more inventory.
That's exactly it. Speaking of new inventory, when a new home is built and the city goes in and approves it for occupancy, it seems to me that the well test is very sparse.
Well, I'll tell you,
it's bacteria.
Well, you're right. The builder is only responsible for providing potable water.
Right.
So potable water means absence of bacteria. It does not mean that it doesn't have other things in it that are dangerous.
Exactly. So it could have...
Or undesirable, I guess.
Exactly. It could have a ton of other... So the basic panel of things that our typical buyer would test for are not being tested for on a new home.
There is a bill. I'm not sure if it's passed through the Senate presently, something called HB 667.
Okay.
And we, Secondwind, participated in, on the stakeholder end of things, talking about what we see, what we find in the marketplace. And that is people buy homes, the builder, no bacteria, bam, here you go. And then they don't think about it because they assume they got what they need. And this bill is a standard requirement now, or requirement for a standard testing, and plus arsenic.
So this is proposed.
This has passed the House.
It has passed.
It has passed the House, yes.
So it's got to go through the Senate.
And now I think it's got to go through the Senate, yeah.
The other thing I always wonder about with new construction in a new well is that well hasn't really settled yet.
Correct. So this testing obligation, while the builder still owns it, it's actually the well or the pump person that is responsible for taking that test, providing it to the owner, and the owner has to mitigate anything that is objectionable prior to getting their certificate of occupancy.
And the objectionable would be EPA primary and secondary?
Just primaries.
Just primaries.
And the exception would be is if you've got a humongous amount of iron. We've had new neighborhoods come in that have had just unmanageable amount, which indicates that there's something faulty with the way the well was made.
Okay. All right.
And that's a different challenge.
We have a prior episode about water quality and buying and selling homes where we talk a little bit about the difference between EPA primary and EPA secondary testing. So in addition to PFAS, we've got some concern about uranium and arsenic.
The past year or two, Secondwind has been... we do what our clients ask us to, and people are more interested in uranium because guess what? It's the mother of radon. So we've got radon here.
Yes.
You got to think we got to have uranium, but we were thinking and mostly experienced with 93 West up 89 into New London and Sunapee. Well, we started testing uranium more and more around the state, and we found a big hit over here. We found a big hit in Milford. Highest hit so far in Hollis.
Really?
Which means that it is elsewhere. And there's a test you could call it's a gross alpha. You can run that through Nelson, and that will tell you what all the alpha emitters are in the water. And if that number is over 30, which is what the MCL for uranium is, 30 parts per billion, then you kind of say, let's go ahead and we'll test uranium. If that doesn't explain the number, then you can test radium. and you get down to what it is that's causing the emission of the radiation.
So would I automatically add uranium to my test panel? Would I only do it if I saw that I had a high radon test?
I've talked to Andy Nelson. I want him to put uranium on the comprehensive.
So this
now, whether that's going to happen or not, this
right.
is just our experience driving my
This
my
is
mouth.
Nelson Analytical. They're a lab in Manchester. They happen to be one of the labs that I really like in a real estate transaction because not only are they accurate, but they're on time.
Mm-hmm.
And when we have
Quality
everybody
work.
waiting for the test results, not every lab is very good about timely reports. But anyway, so you talked to Andy Nelson, you said.
Yeah, I'd like them to put this uranium as part of the comprehensive.
So that it would just be automatically in the panel.
And then you identify whether it is or not. Because again, people sometimes, when they're going to do this lab test, they're thinking less is more.
Right.
And then they're not as expansive. And we see it and we say, hey, maybe you should. So, but the reality is it probably won't happen because he's already got enough to do to handle the comprehensive as it's written right now. But it's only another $25 or $30 to do the analysis. So if you're concerned about that, if you've got high radon, you might want to just rule it out because it is a health issue and it's directly causal for kidney cancer.
Really? Okay. And is it treated similar to how you treat radon in water?
It is treated similarly to how we would treat for arsenic.
Okay.
It is an anion component, just like arsenic is an anion component. So the technologies that remove that would remove.
So explain that to me like I'm 5 or 15 months.
Well, if you have a softener, you are removing what positive components, calcium, iron, dissolved iron, and manganese, magnesium are all positive. So that positive is attracted to the negative, and the positive sodium goes into the water. The anion just uses a different resin. So instead of attracting positives, it attracts negatives.
Okay.
And that ion exchange happens. So instead of the sodium popping into the stream, you've got the chloride side.
And there's been an increase in arsenic in New Hampshire, from what I understand, because the state added an additional consumer disclosure for it a couple of years ago.
There is an increase in the identification and the recognition of its importance in New Hampshire. Arsenic is part of our bedrock. The same amount of arsenic's been here forever and ever. But people are now learning more about it. And the significance of the standard change is what's raising the attention. So it was 50, then for years it was 10. As of 2021 January, the limit is 5 parts per billion.
Okay.
So there are public water systems and municipalities that have that in their water supply, and they will need to be compliant by the 2021, which means capital expenditures and planning.
Yeah.
A lot of work to be done.
A lot of work to be done.
So how do we get arsenic, and where does arsenic come from?
Arsenic generally lives in the bedrock. And if it doesn't live in the bedrock, it might be an industrial contaminant or a discharge sort of a contaminant.
Is it
I thought it was in the tree roots.
Tree roots?
I thought it was
No, it's
roots.
a mineral. No.
Okay.
Oh, no, it's a metal.
Another thing I've been wrong about for years.
Oops.
Hey, you're an educator. Thank you.
No, arsenic is one of these things when our Earth was forming, and from the center of the Earth, the molten rock came up, and it just happened to come up and it layers. And when you go by, on Route 93, it's famous. You look at all those little lines of things that are living in there, and arsenic is part of that.
Okay.
As is uranium, as are nitrates, as is, almost anything else. Radium.
Right.
Hardness.
So,
iron.
So if we were to treat, by we, I just mean a consumer. If a consumer was to treat arsenic, how do they go about doing that?
Depending upon the level that you have, the first thing you want to do is remove it from your consumable water. And that would be at your drinking water taps. You could use an arsenic-specific adsorption media, which you would attach to your kitchen cold, or you could use reverse osmosis, which would take out other things that might be of concern in addition to the arsenic.
Like the PFAS.
Like uranium.
Okay. So you could handle all 3 of those with a reverse osmosis system.
Yep, absolutely.
And those are okay for using in the household other than consuming. So you really only have to treat the water that you're going to drink or cook with.
Yeah, essentially. And that is, whatever your value system is, whether you've got young children who are sucking the water out of the washcloth in the tub, maybe.
Yep.
But also, too, we've got
Your dog drinks from the toilet.
They do. I was the same mine. That's all she wants.
Yeah.
But then you have the higher levels. And, while they say, under a quickie shower, you won't be impacted. Mm-hmm. But I'm not sure, if you get up to 800 parts, how comfortable you would be just treating your drinking water. You might want to do a whole house situation.
Is uranium similar to the radon in that once it's converted to steam, you're inhaling it?
No.
Okay.
No.
Because radon, I know you do want to treat the whole house.
Well, radon is a gas.
Radon's a gas, right.
And you want to take out the gas as it enters into the house. And generally, again, depending upon how much radon you have, we can use carbon up to about 10,000 picocuries. And then after that, we aerate the water. And you bubble and froth and bubble and froth, and then the gas goes out.
Bubble-up system.
And
one of those washing machines.
Sized, yeah.
Jet engines.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a noisy and sometimes hassle-some, those microelectronics.
And expensive, yes.
And expensive. And, the basement isn't a great idea. A great environment for some of those electronics. So sometimes we have issues if they're wet basements.
That makes sense.
That makes sense. That makes sense. So anything that we have not asked you about regarding these three items, the PFAS, the uranium, and the arsenic?
I would just say that public water systems need to be aware, and I'm sure they are, and commercial people at this point. If you've got an office building or schools, you should have done. We are.
Hello.
We're monitoring a lot of them.
Okay.
And, because schools are what they call a non-transient, non-community public water system, the regulations to remove these things are a little less stringent than community systems. So apartments and condos and things, they have the tightest restrictions. The non-transient, non-community, we need to know what's there. The kids go there every day. They consume the water. And so...
and the cafeteria is cooking with the water and,
Right. So the dedicated taps, we took all the dedicated lines in the Merrimack school systems a couple summers ago, and they've got protected water for all their taps for the kids.
Nice. Good.
Because while their municipality has the PFAS in the water, in the case of Wyndham, they had a little bit of arsenic in the water in addition to PFAS, so we did reverse osmosis over there, and now those kids are getting, their consumable water is protected from that stuff.
That's good.
And it's just the standard change of the arsenic is getting lowered. So, it's not like the toxicity is changing, it's just the limits. And again, in the residential world, there's no water supply that's regulated. So it's all about community information.
What that individual homeowner tests for and treats for. Yeah.
Right. What their value system is.
Right.
Some people do not care, and that is fine.
Yep.
We're in the granite state. You can be a granite head if you want.
Live free or die. It's right on the license plate. Yeah.
But the technology available, the technologies are generally, reverse osmosis is really your most protective because, again, remove the thing that is in there. But then if anything should happen down the road,
new things we're not aware of,
exactly, you will be protected, hopefully.
So we should retest our water and
get an RO,
a reverse osmosis, and we'll need to test from an untreated sample,
right?
So early on, maybe right off of our pressure tank.
The pressure tank has a boiler drain on it.
Sure.
Okay. All right.
And actually, I think you do have a sample tap.
We do.
That's put in there, but make sure that you run your water for half an hour before you take that sample.
Okay.
And use the rubbing alcohol to
sanitize
the spout.
No blowtorch on the brass.
Okay.
We train homeowners, home inspectors too, because we've got some false positives where the guy you couldn't find his bleach is also a bad thing. Don't use bleach when you're taking a sample because the first thing Andy will do at the lab is test for presence of bleach.
And he'll say, somebody chlorinated this, so it's a treated sample. Yeah.
But this home inspector had a blowtorch and he just heated it up to kill the bacteria and he released lead into the sample.
Oh no.
So lead is another one of those things on the primary end of things that we don't have naturally occurring lead. Mm-hmm. So usually if you see lead and or copper in our water, it is because of a corrosive situation.
It's something in the pipes.
Something coming from the plumbing.
Right. Right.
You know.
Well, I thank you so much, Marie. This is
you're
very
welcome.
valuable information. Sounds like we could talk for days. Also, we're grateful to Ed, our producer, and to Dave, who provides the Studio 21 Podcast Cafe. We hope you enjoyed this opportunity to get real about real estate. Please like, subscribe, and share Spouses Talking Houses with your friends, family, neighbors, and your dentist. If you like the show, we'd be grateful if you leave a review. We listen to your feedback, and reviews help others find this podcast. Take care.
Thank you.
Music courtesy of the Eric Lindbergh Trio. Please visit his website at www.ericlindberghworld.com. Jennifer and Brian are licensed to practice real estate in New Hampshire and Massachusetts. Brian is also a certified general appraiser in New Hampshire. They are not lawyers, accountants, home inspectors, or therapists. Real estate customs and rules may be different in your area. Each Keller Williams Realty office is independently owned and operated. The Realtor name is trademarked to members of the National Association of Realtors. If you are currently under contract with a real estate agent, this is not intended as a solicitation. Views expressed on this podcast by Jennifer may not be shared by Brian and vice versa, nor are they necessarily the views of Keller Williams Realty.
The views and opinions expressed by the hosts, guests, or callers of this program do not necessarily reflect the opinions of the Studio 21 Podcast Cafe, the United Podcast Network, its partners, or affiliates.